Hey, what's up everyone out there? This is Jakejames Lugo. Welcome to the channel and welcome to a brand new episode of JJ's One Man Podcast. I know that there's been more time getting in between each one of these episodes, so bear with me. Like I've told you guys plenty of times, I've been working on a lot of content for all of you here on the channel. Hopefully you've been enjoying all of it. But like always, leave me a like on this video, comment down below with your thoughts about the stuff that we're going to talk about in this one, as well as also don't forget to subscribe to the channel. So, with that being said, the reason why I'm doing this episode is because I'm kind of hitting multiple fronts at the same time. Not only did I want to do my reactions and kind of like my overall post thoughts about the Game Awards 2020, with all the winners and everything else that came from it, but also I was a little bit inspired by this article that was posted up on Kotaku, which was related to the Game Awards and to the Game of the Year winner for the Game Awards 2020. And I have some thoughts about it. Now, specifically for that Kotaku article, we'll get to that as I get to the category that's related to it. But let's kind of start things off with just some of my overall afterthoughts and impressions from watching the Game Awards. Now, I've talked about this a few times with a few other people, especially that same day after the Game Awards happened. And I have to say, like, a lot of people have been down on these awards. It's like, it happens every year. I don't know what it is with people. I don't know what their expectations are or what is it that they're hoping for this show to become. But the show that we got this year wasn't bad. And I say that almost every single year because every single year people feel like it's boring. People feel like it's a garbage thing. It hasn't improved. It's not doing anything for the games industry. And I totally disagree with that. I understand that a lot of the games that were shown on there are not for everybody, including me. There was a bunch of instances where I was watching trailers and I'm like, what is this game? Or I was like, I'm not feeling this. I just don't care about this. Here's a bathroom break. Like, you guys know exactly how it is when you're watching award shows and things like that happen. So the thing about this that I always keep in mind is that the Game Awards are not just for us. The Game Awards are not just for the industry. Not only do they have the games that we do care about, like, again, we got some big announcements and big reveals. It started off pretty strong with the reveal of Sephiroth in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which is a very big deal for a lot of people, including myself. And we did also get a couple cool world premieres, including the reveal of Mass Effect, some stuff with Dragon Age, and all the other games that they had shown throughout the show. A lot of indie games and a lot of games that weren't necessarily part of the big franchises, which I understand. A lot of the big guys and companies are working on their games, and I think that the pandemic really pushed things back. However, the thing that I always keep in mind with this show is that it's not always for us. It has to do with the general audience that the show is trying to appeal to. They want not only the celebrities to be there as part of the show to get picked up by the trades, which I think is totally a thing so that way other outlets that are outside of the games industry can report on the show and bring in more people beyond that. But on top of that, they're also just trying to entice all different types of fandoms. I get it that a lot of Nintendo fans were kind of disappointed besides the Sephiroth reveal, which, again, I don't know how you could be disappointed in that. But there was no news about like Breath of the Wild 2 or any of the other big Nintendo games that people have been wanting for a while. And you can't hold that against Jeff. You have to, again, I don't even think you could really hold that against Nintendo. They're just not ready to show off a lot of their big games. At the same time, a lot of other companies outside of like Square Enix that showed off Nier, the Nier remaster that's coming very soon, as well as also any of their other games that they kind of like had commercials for here and there. I mean, there's a lot of games that we want to see, but they're probably just not done yet. And all these other games that are still part of the industry that do have a right to be there, they do have to appeal to that audience. At least they do have a right to show off their stuff and bring that audience to the Game Awards. Again, it's a night where everybody comes together, very similar in the fashion that E3 is supposed to bring everybody together. I think that everybody gets caught up in the spectacle of E3 because everybody has their own fandoms and stuff. And that's totally fine. But you can't say that the show is bad just because you didn't get to see like an exorbitant amount of games that you're super hyped about. Again, it's bound to be that maybe you'll catch a couple of things, but again, for the majority of the show, I still think that it was still pretty darn good. Even the musical performances, the Philharmonic, I was telling somebody not too long ago that I hope that Jeff never stops doing that he never stops bringing the Philharmonic or the London Philharmonic or any sort of orchestra like that to play music, to not only do like a montage of music for the Game of the Year nominees, but also just the cool performances that are like nods to like Super Mario 35th anniversary. That was pretty darn cool. And again, the Game of the Year nominees at the very end where it was like a montage of all these different themes played with an orchestra. I think that's super classy. I think that's pretty darn awesome. I think it's something that we just don't get a lot of, and it's nice to see it at a time like this. But anyway, those are just my thoughts about that stuff. So let's go through some of the winners. Now, of course, the big ones we'll get to in just a second, but I do want to mention a few others that are kind of standouts to me that are either ones that I didn't expect to win or I felt like I understood even though they weren't my pick. Like the biggest the biggest, like, obvious one and like the obvious category I could say is probably Mortal Kombat 11 winning fighting game of the year. Like there wasn't a whole lot of other fighting games that came out that really could compete with it. Grand Blue Fantasy Versus was a decent game from what I heard from a lot of people, but it's not competing with Mortal Kombat 11. I called that. Like a lot of these I called, as well as also stuff like, best VR game went to Half-Life Alyx. That was a given since a whole bunch of people that vote on these awards love Half-Life. Best action game, I was surprised that went to Hades, even though I expected Hades to win a lot more awards. But in that category, we had stuff like Half-Life Alyx. We had Doom Eternal, which I'm surprised didn't really win anything. Or if I'm not mistaken, I think it maybe won one type of award or so. I'm scrolling through it here on Google, just trying to like refresh myself. Best performance went to Laura Bailey for The Last of Us Part 2. I think that was well-deserved. There was a couple awards that The Last of Us won that I feel like were very well-deserved, that people were kind of like dogging on them for because they felt like things were a little bit rigged, and I don't think so, because no matter how you feel about that game, again, I never played The Last of Us Part 2 as of yet. I'm going to eventually. You still have to respect the quality, and you have to respect a lot of the effort that went into making that experience, no matter how you felt about it, whether you loved it or hated it. Then best sports game went to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. That was a given. I mean, they got FIFA 21, they got NBA 2K 21, and all these other games, but it's like, nah. So everybody loves Tony Hawk. Like, I felt like that was the go-to winner. Best soundtrack. Okay, here was the one I was thinking of before. Best soundtrack I thought was going to get a nod to Doom Eternal, but it went to Final Fantasy VII Remake. Understandably and deservedly so. That soundtrack for FF7 Remake is awesome. And FF7 Remake also took Best RPG. Now, a lot of people said that Paper Mario, The Thousand Year Door got snubbed in this category. Or no, not Paper Mario. That was Best Family Game. Best Role-Playing Game, Yakuza Like a Dragon got snubbed. I don't think so. Now, like I've said many times, I haven't played Yakuza Like a Dragon. I hear it's very, very good. However, with the impact that Final Fantasy VII Remake had, there's no way that it wasn't going to win that category. I felt like just everybody with the way that they resonate with Final Fantasy VII, just in general, and the impact that, how big of an event that Final Fantasy VII Remake was when it released, I felt like that was just a given. That was the winner right there for Best RPG. Don't get me wrong, all these other games that they have in there, with the exception of maybe Wasteland 3, because I never played Wasteland at all, Genshin Impact, Yakuza Like a Dragon, Persona 5 Royal, all great games. All games that you should pick up if you're a big RPG fan. Funny enough, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition wasn't included in here, and I think that's probably because the people that voted on these categories did not play it, more than likely. But anyway, I'm going to kind of skim through a couple of these other categories, because then I want to get to the big thing I want to discuss. Best community support went to Fall Guys, which very surprising to me. I thought Fortnite had that, because Fortnite and their events are absolutely insane. Same thing for best ongoing game. I thought Fortnite was going to take it, but it went to No Man's Sky. And I understood the reasoning behind this, because I talked about it, I simmered on it for a little bit, and I'm like, okay, even though No Man's Sky is not my cup of tea, and I feel like No Man's Sky really stumbled in the very beginning, a lot of people did not like that game. They've really changed up and really kind of, switched things around for that game, especially the perception of it. And a lot of people were like, okay, this is nonsense. I don't think so. I think that it's still, a decent winner to go to, because they've stuck with that game. But anyway, that's just my opinion. So best art direction went to Ghost of Tsushima. Again, you could have argued for any one of the games that were nominated in that category. I think that maybe Hades would have been a cool winner, or Ori and the Will of the Wisp, because again, just visually, that game looks phenomenal. Ghost of Tsushima, though, is still awesome. It was still my pick for Game of the Year, and the way that game looks and the way that, things are presented in that game, like, there's a hard argument there that could be made for that. So now I start looking at some of these other categories, and I'm starting to see, like, now, as I'm refreshing, that The Last of Us Part 2 won a lot of them, like Best Narrative, Best Direction. Whoops. I'm kind of like dating my phone here. Best Direction also went to The Last of Us, and this is why I wanted to bring up Kotaku. Okay, now, if you guys didn't see already, there was an article posted up by Kotaku. I'm actually going to look at it right now. It's done by Ian Walker. You should go read it. It's called Games Made Under Crunch Conditions Don't Deserve Best Direction Awards. Now, I read through the article. I'm not going to summarize it. If you want to know exactly what he said, go look at it. Go read the article. It's on Kotaku right now. It's probably getting a lot of hits and stuff. But I disagree with a lot of the stuff that's brought up in this article. And it comes down to one main thing that I couldn't stop thinking about as I was reading this. Because he makes an argument that crunch is bad. I don't think that anybody in the industry, whether you're a media person, a development person, PR person, or even us content creators and influencers and stuff like that, everybody agrees that crunch sucks. That if you have the opportunity to not do crunch and not crunch on a game's development whatsoever and make your deadlines, don't do crunch. Nobody's arguing that. But here's where me and this article kind of diverge. I don't think that it's fair to come out and say that just because there's some practices that the industry or certain people don't agree with or that have a real problem with, you shouldn't take away the fact that this game won an award at the Game Awards, even if it's for best direction or whatever category like that. In my personal opinion, again, this is just me saying this. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. It's not the job of the Game Awards or any award show to pass judgment on a studio for stuff or any other things, whether it's a studio or other things related to a game that are outside of the game and the final product itself. Because I feel like what's being judged and what's being taken into account for these awards and picking the winners is the final product, is the actual game itself, the content of the game, the experience of the game, not necessarily what's going on at the studio. Now, some people might disagree with me on that, and I feel like that's coming from a place where you want to punish the studios that you feel like are doing wrong, and I get it, but what we're talking about here is being fair, okay? And to me, what's fair is that you can't judge a studio like that in an award show like this. You can't just pass judgment or try to almost feel like you're trying to, rah-rah for a certain cause or feel like you're trying to get one at the studio because you feel like certain people were wronged there. That's, to me, is an entirely different conversation. I think that articles like this, they're allowed to be made. And I think that that type of topic, involving crunch and all this other stuff, which we've been talking about for a while, articles should be made related to that. But when it comes to the award shows, you can't I don't think that it's fair to deny a game or deny a team that worked in a game that probably went through crunch and went through hell, deny them an award just because of the stuff that you feel like is not right. Again, it's two entirely or multiple entirely different conversations. So that's just my personal opinion. Like I said, I wanted to mention that in this because I feel like it was just something that inspired me. And I feel like it's all these issues getting kind of meshed up together and people are getting into this conversation. It's like, okay, that's not Jeff Keighley's or the Game Awards responsibility to kind of, police the practices of certain companies in the industry. I don't think that's right. I don't think that you should throw that responsibility on Jeff or the Game Awards. Just at the same time, like I said, and I know I keep repeating myself, but it's not fair to deny a team that probably went through that an award that they won. Now, as far as business practices on who different people work with or what games that you support as a consumer, again, you could entirely decide not to buy the game or not buy their future games or make yourself vocal on social media. That's totally fine. Hell yeah. Go out and do that multiple times if you have to. But we're talking about these awards? No, I can't really be down with this article. So now finally that leads to the game of the year, which went to The Last of Us Part 2. Now, personally, like I've said before in my predictions video, if you guys want to check that out, my predictions for, or at least my picks for the Game Awards winning Game of the Year this year was going to be Final Fantasy VII Remake or Ghost of Tsushima. And I did mention that more than likely an underdog of this entire group was going to be Hades. And the thing is that every single one of these games, Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Doom Eternal, Animal Crossing New Horizon, Final Fantasy VII Remake, all these games have very strong cases that you can make that this is the game of this year, especially Animal Crossing. This was brought up to me in another conversation I was having the day after the Game Awards. Animal Crossing came at the best time. For that game, because if we weren't in a pandemic and we weren't in staying at home for all the stuff that's going on right now, Animal Crossing would not be as big as it was. And Animal Crossing had hit everything at the perfect time. And it was just something that we needed at that moment. So for being a game within 2020, I feel like that was a game that's that's like a big deal for a lot of people this year. Even though it might not be in the same level of quality that some people would say for The Last of Us Part 2 or Ghost of Tsushima or Final Fantasy VII Remake. My argument for FF7 Remake was that was an event. That was like a huge deal for a lot of people, both in and out of the industry. Even people that aren't hardcore gamers that probably know of Final Fantasy VII, that was a thing. That was like a major thing, both from, the journey that when it's first started up to now when it finally got released. And even if you liked or hated the game, it was still something that everybody was paying attention to. And I didn't think that any of these other games, with maybe the exception of The Last of Us Part 2, mainly because of the conversation about that game between people, really reached that same level of zenith on social media or anywhere else in the industry. Now, as far as my thoughts about Last of Us winning it, I got it. I understand. I think that the people that were voting on this category, all of them were really kind of going into this, I felt, with The Last of Us Part 2 being the definitive winner because of multiple reasons. I think that there's a lot of other things that also get conflated in the conversation about what makes a game of the year, as well as also what makes a game like the definitive one of this year. I think that a lot of the conversations around The Last of Us Part 2 weren't all that great. especially with some of the toxic parts of the games industry or the gaming community out there. I think that's put so much in the forefront with a game like this and everything else associated with it, that either certain people were letting their biases get in the way with them, or they just weren't looking at the full picture. And I think that, games like Ghost of Tsushima, I feel like even though it wasn't doing anything different, what it was doing was done so well. It was the Assassin's Creed style game that we all wanted in feudal Japan. And I felt like that was, the way that its cinematography and all this other stuff related to it was so good that you had to talk about that game. The only one in this category that I feel like shouldn't be in there, if I had to choose one of them, and I even said this in my predictions, is Doom Eternal. And I love Doom Eternal. Do not get me wrong. I love Doom. Doom is amazing. I haven't played Doom Eternal in full, but one day I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to play through it because I'm a Doom fan. However, I still feel like Ori and the Will of the Wisp should have been one of the nominees in this category. But again, that's just me and that's just my own personal opinion. And I get why this one is thrown into here. So either way, all in all, as to kind of like wrap things up here, because I know I'm going a little bit long, I still think that the Game Awards were still pretty good, despite all the stuff and the nonsense surrounding them, with people talking about the awards or their impressions and stuff. I still think it's a good show. It's something that we need in the games industry or just in the gaming community in general, even though we're never going to be trying to compete with like the Oscars and stuff because we're two totally different mediums. We still command enough presence and enough attention and enough notoriety, as a games industry or just greater gaming community to have something like this. Because I told somebody else a while back, if the Game Awards weren't important, or at least, if you don't care about the Game Awards and you're so down on them all the time, go look at an award show like DICE. And DICE is not as important or not as popular. Same thing with the Golden Joysticks. They're not as important as the Game Awards. And the reason being is because Jeff and the way that team structures that show is that they're trying to appeal to the much more masses out there rather than just cater to the specifics of the games industry or the specific bubbles of the games industry. It's something that you got to think about, what you want to support or what you feel like if you're even looking at things from the right way. So anyway, those are just my overall thoughts, my impressions, my reactions and stuff for the Game Awards, as well as also this Kotaku article. Like I said before, leave me a comment down below in the comment section. Like this video, subscribe to the channel as always. I'll promise I'll try to see if I could get more of these actual JJ's One Man Podcast episodes out with different topics. If you got suggestions of stuff you want to hear me talk about or kind of touch on, put it in the comments or hit me up on Twitter. Let me know what's up. With that being said, I will talk to all of you again very soon. Peace out and stay epic, everybody.